What do you mean I'm not in the will anymore? My voice ricocheted off the high ceilings of my parents' sprawling Chicago living room. Sharp with disbelief, I stared at my father, waiting for some crack in his icy facade. Exactly what I said, Elise, he replied, his tone clipped and surgical, like he was dictating a memo. Your mother and I have decided your share of the inheritance is better off with your brother. He's actually done something with his life. My mother nodded, her manicured nails clicking against her coffee mug like a metronome. Honey, we've watched you flounder with that little app venture of yours for years. We just think the money's safer with someone who's proven they can handle it. The words hit me like a sucker punch. 29. I'd poured the last 4 years into my health tech startup, surviving on instant noodles, grinding through 18-hour days. Sure, it had been a brutal climb, but I was this close to a breakthrough. You can't be serious, I whispered, barely audible over the hum of my own shock. My father swept his hand through the air, as if my lack of a penthouse was Exhibit A. And what do you have to show for it, Elise? Your brother's got a corner office at Goldman Sachs. You? A desk and some co-working dump and dreams too big for your own good. The sting wasn't new. I'd heard this tune my whole life, when I picked Northwestern over Yale, when I chose coding over law school, when I ditched a cushy corporate gig to chase my own vision. This isn't about the money, I said, tears clawing at my throat. It's about you never believing in me. Oh, Elise, my mother sighed, exchanging a glance with my father that screamed, poor delusional girl. We're just being practical. Not everyone's cut out for success. There's no shame in a steady job. I sucked in a shaky breath. They didn't know, couldn't know, what I'd planned to tell them today before they blindsided me. My failing startup had just scored a meeting with the nation's biggest healthcare provider. If that deal landed, everything would flip. But as I stormed out, my phone buzzed. An email from my lead investor, flagged urgent. My gut twisted. Things were about to get uglier. I slumped in my car outside their pristine brownstone, reeling. The inheritance wasn't a fortune, maybe $500,000 from my grandparents, split between us grandkids, but the message was loud and clear. I was the family screw-up. Growing up as Arthur and Margaret Kane's daughter meant suffocating under a spotlight of expectation. My father had built his empire on pharma investments. My mother's old money roots ran deep. Success wasn't optional, it was a mandate, and it came with a strict playbook. My brother Ethan nailed it. Ivy League finance career trophy wife, 2 photogenic kids, and a Hamptons retreat by 35. Me? I was the wild card. Top of my class? Could have been better. Killer internships? Not quite enough. For years ago, I'd spotted a gaping hole in healthcare tech. With my coding chops and corporate experience, I built an AI platform, CarePredict, that could forecast patient readmissions with jaw-dropping precision. My parents? They laughed when I quit my 6-figure job to chase it. Another millennial dreaming of being Elon Musk, my father had sneered. They refused to invest, calling it a waste of good money. So I hustled, scraping cash from angel investors who got it, launching a pilot with a local hospital, stacking data that proved CarePredict worked. Then 3 months back, I'd caught wind of my father sinking big money into Medicore, a public company peddling a rival solution. My mother dropped it casually over dinner, her eyes probing. Your father thinks it's the future. I'd brushed it off as coincidence. Healthcare AI was booming, right? But sitting in my car, the dots connected. The timing of the will switch. Their sharper jabs at my startup, those smug glances. This wasn't just disappointment. This was war. The call with my investor Victor was a gut punch. Elise. Medicore just locked a deal with HealthSpan, he said, voice tight. They're rolling out their system across all 53 hospitals. HealthSpan, the same group I'd been wooing for months. The one I was set to pitch next week. That's impossible, I stammered. They loved us. Medicore undercut us with a dirt cheap offer and some boardroom muscle, Victor said. Word is, they knew about your meeting and moved fast to kill it. Boardroom muscle like my father, a major Medicore investor? I hung up, hands trembling, and dug into Medicore's dirt. Their tech was shaky. Their stock had been tanking until today's announcement sent it rocketing 43%. Then my old classmate Sarah, a HealthSpan exec, called. The chairman greenlit Medicore after golfing with an investor, Harold Kane. He trashed your tech, said it wouldn't scale. My own father had knifed me in the back. I sat there numb, as the truth sank in. He'd hijacked my shot and cut me out of the will to twist the blade deeper. Without healthspan, my runway was 3 months tops. I could have stormed back to confront them, or collapsed in defeat. Instead, I hauled myself to my tiny office where my 5 devs were still grinding, oblivious to the wreckage. We're pivoting, I told them the next morning, laying out the healthspan disaster. Your dad torpedoed us? Leo, my lead coder, gaped. I nodded, throat tight. But we're not done. Our tech's better, we just need to prove it. For 3 weeks we burned the midnight oil, tweaking our algorithm and pitching smaller hospital chains. We landed a shot with Northridge Health, a 12-hospital network, not healthspan huge but enough to breathe. The night before the pitch, Ethan texted. Heard about healthspan. Rough. Maybe take that Deloitte gig? Dad can pull strings. I ignored him. He'd always played peacemaker, but he picked their side when it counted. The Northridge pitch was electric. Their tech team grilled us, we nailed every answer. Your accuracy is unreal, their chief doc said, grinning. I'm optimistic. Hope flickered until 3 days later when Northridge emailed a polite rejection. Then Leo burst in pale, waving his tablet. Medicore had just announced a partnership with Kane Ventures, my father's firm, to push their tech into regional markets. First name on the list? Northridge. He's boxing us out. I whispered, the betrayal crushing me. That night, my mother called. Dinner tomorrow, 7 o'clock. We need to talk. The Wilsons might drop by. My father's cronies. Not a family mea culpa. A stage for their golden boy, Ethan. I showed up in my sharpest dress, not for them but as armor. They were all smiles like our last fight never happened. We've been hasty about the will. My mother cooed over shrimp. We'd reconsider. If you ditch that app and join Kane Ventures. We need your tech skills. A lifeline with a leash. I smiled tightly. I'll think about it. But something stank. Why now, after they'd spent months burying me? I dug into Medicore's financials and froze. Kane Ventures owned 15%, bought 6 months ago. Right when CarePredict started buzzing. Worse, Medicore's tech was a sham, rigged trials, bloated marketing, slashed R&D. They were bleeding cash, propped up by my father's deals. His whole portfolio rode on them, and my collapse. Then, a lifeline, Dr. Elena Ortiz from Unity Health, the country's second biggest provider, emailed. Your summit talk stuck with me. Let's discuss CarePredict for our 70 hospitals. I kept it hush-hush, prepped like mad, and nailed the meeting. Your tech's legit, built on data, not hype, Ortiz said. We've tested Medicore. It's smoke. We shook on a 5-hospital pilot. I floated a lie to my father. Meeting investors next week might sell CarePredict. To buy time. The pilot crushed it. Our predictions smoked Medicore's and Unity wanted more. Then Sarah slipped me Medicore's healthspan disaster report. Wildly off-target. Cost spiraling. I fed it all to Ryan Cole, a healthcare journalist. 2 days later, as I inked the Unity deal, someone guess who? Tried hacking our servers. We locked it down, planted decoys, and signed with Unity at dawn. The press release was a quiet bomb. Unity Health picks CarePredict. 89% more accurate than the market leader. Cole's expose hit hours later. Gutting Medicore with proof of fraud and my father's dirty fingerprints. Their stock cratered 67%. My phone blew up. Ethan's, is this real? Among them. I ignored it. Unity offered equity that afternoon. Victory tasted sweet. My parents showed up that night, ghosts in designer clothes. You've ruined us, my mother wailed. Medicore's done, Kane Ventures is under SEC scrutiny. My father begged. Help us, the house, everything's gone. I leaned back. You backed a lie that risked lives. I built something real. I can't save you. They left, broken. The next day, my team cheered Unity's investment. Alone, I tucked away an old family photo, no triumph, just clarity. I'd outgrown their shadow. CarePredict would save lives. That was enough.